Well, a little while ago now, we got the third installment in the Avatar franchise with Avatar Fire and Ash, and a week or so ago, I went to see it. Now, we're going to talk about it. Avatar, the blue aliens this time, and not the elemental benders, is probably one of my favourite film franchises. When it first came out back in 2009, it was one of the weirdest experiences of my life, at least from a film perspective. It felt like everybody was going to see it again and again, and of course, because of that, it ended up making a ton of money. It was also at the height of the 3D craze, where it felt like you just couldn't escape it. As somebody who wears glasses, I'm not all that fond of 3D sessions, so I'm glad it's not as much of a thing in this day and age, but back then, it was simply the done thing. Everyone did it. The film ended up making a heap of money, and after re-releases, it's still the highest grossing film of all time. Despite that though, it feels like a franchise that very much goes dormant for very long periods. When the first one came out, it felt like everybody in the world saw it, and yet in the years since, it never really came up all that much. When it was mentioned, it was in the context of box office discussions or to talk about the visual side of things and how sequels had been announced. In terms of the story and the world, it simply didn't seem to have all that much underlying fandom, if that made sense. When the sequels were announced, whilst I was keen and not one of those people that seems to want to make hating Avatar my whole personality, it also very quickly faded to the back of my mind. The second film came and went and I was excited, but then once more, I stopped thinking about it. It was even the same with this third film, to tell you the truth. I'd see the trailers and everything coming out and it would hype me up, but then it would rapidly fade from my mind much faster than any other major franchise I can think of, where I 100% try to keep up with things as much as I can. I went to see the film and I liked it a lot, but the same thing happened again. By the next day, I was kind of over it. I had fun, but I was done. I didn't much dwell on the story of the characters for long afterwards, as opposed to other major franchises and big ticket films. I got massively hyped up probably the day or two leading up to the film. I went to see it and I enjoyed it a lot, but until I sat down to write the video, it entirely vanished out of my mind. Part of me though thinks that this is the special appeal of Avatar. It's very casual friendly. It's not all consuming and you don't have to think too hard or keep up with all the installments to know what's going on. Every couple of years one of these movies is going to be made and you go and see it, it's huge for a while and then it fades into a corner of your mind until the lead up to the next one. I kind of like that in this day and age. It's a similar concept to all these long-running TV shows that take ages between seasons, but I think it's executed better because the long gaps don't come with less content with each subsequent installment. However, something I did notice in the lead up and now the film's released is that there does seem to be this heavy contingent of people online that seem massively determined to hate this franchise and downplay its success. A common turn of phrase I've seen from people ranting and raving is, "Who asked for this?" or something similar. I mean, considering the first two films grossed over $2 billion each, I'd say a lot of people asked for this. Just because people aren't always talking about it doesn't mean they think it sucks or anything like that. I think there are just a lot of people out there determined to hate the franchise, and so they underplay everything. Oh, it's one of the most lucrative franchises ever made? Well, it doesn't have a huge footprint in pop culture, so there. Trust me guys, this is the one that's gonna bomb. Nobody's gonna go and see Fire and Ash. Oh, it's making a lot of money and is almost at $1 billion? Well, it's not making as much as Way of Water, so Disney can't be happy with these numbers. Conveniently ignoring that Disney quite literally would kill to get these sort of numbers on any other franchise. So yes, perhaps the numbers are declining from the absurd era of Avatar 1, and then even from Way of Water. However, that being said, to claim that this makes it a flop or that the franchise is in trouble, it just makes you look stupid at best and delusional at worst. I mean, come on now. Whatever way you look at it, this is one of the most successful franchises ever made. Seriously, go on the Wikipedia page for film series and have a look at the table of highest grossing film franchises ever. Avatar is currently in the 12th position, and that is from 3 films, one of which is still in the middle of its box office run. Of that top 20, it has the fewest installments overall, and by far the highest average as of right now. The only thing close is Avengers, but even then, Avengers has the benefit of being marketed as the payoff to big stories in the joint universe of the MCU, and is built up for years by preceding films. Meanwhile, Avatar does all this on its own with no build or tie-ins. It's truly insane. We've never seen anything like it. So yes, it's doing well. It's currently sitting on $800 million as of writing this, and it has also seemingly been pretty well received. Maybe not quite as much as the other two critically, but I think the audiences like it well enough. It hits what you want and what you've come to expect from this type of movie. However, now it's time to give my thoughts, and I will say this. I think of the trilogy so far, this one is probably my least favourite, but that's not me trying to knock it. It's just the least of the 3. I think it has moments where it's challenging for the number 1 spot, particularly by the first half. However, in the end, I do think it's perhaps just too similar to The Way of Water. A lot of scenes felt like they're ripped right from that film, rather than fitting in with Fire and Ash. However, we'll talk more about that in just a little bit. Before that, I want to go through some of the other elements of the film and give my thoughts. Of course, we have to start with the visuals, as in the end, this is Avatar, and I'd argue that it is, and always has been, the biggest drawing point of the franchise. When the first film was released, it was very much marketed and advertised as event cinema, the type of movie that would change the face of the industry forever and remake film history. Since then, the franchise has been known for visual excellence with insane CGI designs and action sequences. Fire and Ash is no exception to this. The action's hectic, intense, brutal, and varied. The character and creature designs are beautiful, and we even get 2 brand new Na'vi cultures that feel different and fleshed out based solely on their visuals alone. Is anybody really surprised though? I mean, this is a James Cameron film we're talking about. The dude has been known for visual excellence for pretty much his entire career, and he doesn't want to make things look cheap at all. Hence the absurd budgets and the massive gaps between installments, I suppose. He also just loves to let the action play out. It honestly reminds me of The Lord of the Rings in that way. Obviously, not in terms of content, but just the really large, long action sequences where there's not that much dialogue or story, and is action for the sake of action, but in the best possible way. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it has no character or story moments, but some films would take what they need and cut there. This film gets the story beats within the action, and then it extends the action for another 10 minutes or so, and I love it. It's really just a massive visual feast. If there's one thing that has managed to stick with me beyond the day I saw the movie, it's probably that feeling of awe when you see the world of Pandora and everything that entails. I also just want to briefly say the designs of the Ash people were insanely cool, and I love how they contrasted so heavily with all the other types of Na'vi. In terms of designs, Varung has got to be up there as the greatest of all time in terms of Avatar. Seriously, she just looks like an intimidating and freaky type of character from design alone. Next, I want to talk about the score. The original Avatar was scored by James Horner, and thus he was the one who helped establish the world and feel of Avatar. He passed away though before the second film entered production, and so in the end, he was replaced by Simon Franklin. I won't lie, but I didn't feel the score for The Way of Water. Don't get me wrong, I don't think it was bad or anything like that, it's just I didn't connect to it in the same way, and I was kind of worried it would be the same for me here. However, I really liked the score for Fire and Ash, and I think that it very much enhanced the emotion and the storytelling for a whole lot of scenes. One I particularly liked was the scene where Loak is connected to the underwater tree, and is spending time hanging out with his brother in the afterlife. That whole scene got me a bit misty-eyed, and it was 100% enhanced by the music that was composed for it. Returning to the Fire and Ash theme, I think pretty much every single aspect of the Ash people was perfectly done, and the music was no exception. Just felt very ominous and unsettling, which encapsulates their culture really. This brings us to the performances, which I think for the most part were really good. I know some people like to clown on Jake's portrayal, but I think he gets the character across very well, and he straddles that line where on one hand he is the protagonist, but on the other hand, he is such an asshole, and I just think it works. Hell, I think pretty much all the Na'vi were great, but for me, there were three that well and truly stood above the rest. They're Neytiri, Varung, and then Quaritch. Whenever they're on screen, you pay attention, and it draws you in and makes you care. There's so much beautiful emotion and heart in Neytiri's path of overcoming her grief and prejudice, not just towards Spider, but to her own husband and children too. Varung is simply a compelling villain in every respect. Once again, when she speaks, you listen. A truly great character, although I reckon she was massively underused in the second part. And then there's Quaritch. He's always good, but this time we got to see new sides to his personality as he slowly pulls a dark twist on Jake Sully and integrates with the Ash people. He connects with the Na'vi in his own way, and it makes for a really deep portrayal. Don't get me wrong, these aren't all the good performances in the film, just the ones that really stood out to me. However, that being said, not every performance was completely up to snuff, and I don't think it's due to bad acting, it's weird casting. I know that James Cameron just wanted to be able to bring back Sigourney Weaver, but I don't think she fits as a teenager at this point. It's just her voice. It sounds off. This isn't something that's going to get better either, considering she's, 76 or something like that? Plus, it's not like they've really started to do all that much filming for the next two installments. By the time they're filmed and she does the voice, how old's she going to be? In her 80s? It's gotten to the point where it honestly seems a little bit ridiculous in that way. It really takes me out of it more than anything else. I've also seen a little bit of hate for the guy playing Spider, and yeah, I guess he's not the greatest actor of all time, mostly in the really emotional stuff, but at the same time, he's not as bad as a lot of people are saying online. This then brings us to the story, which for me starts off really strong and interesting. In the wake of her son's death, Neytiri is in the throes of grief and has grown to truly hate all humans and is getting more and more antagonistic towards Spider. At the same time, Jake is not handling his grief all that well, and in the short time since the battle, he started to get harder and harder on his son Loak and clearly blames him for his brother's death. Loak seems to have similar thoughts of feeling responsible, and the children have reintegrated Spider into their family unit. However, an accident with his mask, coupled with Neytiri clearly hating him, prompts Jake to declare that Spider has to return to High Camp with a new Na'vi culture, the Wind Traders. This was some really cool visual design and world building, and it set the film up very well. You have a new Na'vi culture right from the start who feels so different to everything we've seen before. We have conflict in the family. We seem to be moving away from the water area for something different, which was exciting. We had hints of new antagonists with the Ash people who are apparently becoming more aggressive and brazen, whilst we also have Quaritch and the RDA planning things. The whole family travels with the Wind Traders, which leads to an attack by the Ash people, and a truly epic action sequence. I love that they made them seem like such a big deal early on by having them defeat Neytiri and destroy the Wind Traders. Plus, that whole Kuru cutting thing was so excellently brutal and cruel, really vicious. Varung's whole introduction is just excellent, and the section where they're chasing the children through the jungle was so exciting and intense. Coupled with the knowledge that Spider's running out of air, and then the spiritual stuff when Kira uses her Awa powers to help Spider breathe, it's just edge of your seat stuff for me. Varung arrives on the scene and captures the children alongside her clan before Jake, Quaritch, and Wainfleet turn up to try to help them, with Quaritch and Sully getting caught. Here we get so much awesome characterization from Varung. I know that a lot of people consider Avatar to largely largely be style over substance, but this sequence where you meet Varung is just amazing and sets the tone for the whole film so well. I think my major issue with the film in general is that beyond this, you only have a couple more sections where she's a massively key character, and then at a certain point, she starts to feel more like a sidekick to Quaritch rather than an important villain in her own right. Quaritch shows her how to use guns, and there's a certain tension there that gets a payoff later. I think it was a really great creative choice to have a group of Na'vi that actively reject Awa and traditional Pandoran culture, and are eager to pick up the cultural practices and elements from the humans to serve as a foil to the likes of Jake. Kiri once again uses her power to help them escape before the Ash people can sacrifice them, and Jake and Quaritch work together to ensure the children survive before the Colonel dips out when Jake and Neytiri's original tribe finds them after Neytiri flew off to High Camp badly injured to get aid. Here is where the film starts to slow down quite a lot, and perhaps it goes too far in that direction. We do have a lot of key scenes with them discussing how now that Spider can breathe the air himself, the RDA is going to want him so they can try to reproduce what has happened, and thus allow for a full-scale colonization of Pandora. Plus, we have a great sequence where Quaritch decides to make an alliance with the Ash people and starts a relationship with Varung. All of that is really awesome, but at the same time, I also think we start to go from the promise of Fire and Ash to more of a Way of Water Part 2. There are still some really awesome sequences, like Neytiri realizing she thinks less of her kids because they are hybrids rather than pure Pandoran Na'vi, whilst Kiri's dealing with Awa issues, being shut out, and Loak and Jake are having a bad time of it too. But at the same time, it feels like they go back to the well very heavily here with the same sort of vibes as the second film. They have the outcast Tulkun and Loak wanting him to stay in these waters, but instead he gets blamed for being violent with the humans and he's banished in one of the most absurd sequences in the entire movie. They have Spider learning the way of water and bonding with animals now that he is a Kuru. Plus there's the reveal the RDA are coming after the Tulkun again for a big massacre. Oh, and Quaritch and the Ash Na'vi burning random villages to flush out Jake, even though they know where he'd be hiding because they already tried to attack that village before, right? That being said, I did like this stuff still, it just wasn't really living up to the name, Fire and Ash. Spider gets snatched in the woods by the Ash people, and then Jake's forced to leave with them too, otherwise the village is going to get torched and the people murdered. Neytiri goes off on her own to rescue them, and we have a really awesome and intense action sequence here where she infiltrates the city as an Ash Na'vi and tries to kill Varung before flying around causing mayhem. Meanwhile, a marine biologist helps Jake escape so he can in turn save the Tulkun, while Spider also breaks out to help Jake survive by acting as a human shield because he knows they won't kill him. He has that unique nature. They want to study him. After they escape, Jake almost executes Spider to prevent this ever spreading to the RDA, but he can't go through with it, and Neytiri starts to accept Spider, which, I don't know, it felt rushed considering how much she actually hated him. But now he acts as a human shield for Jake one time and they're all good. It's just a little bit weird to me. I think they needed more time for that to cook and maybe have it happen at the end of the film. They get back to the village to warn the Tulkun elders of the massacre, but they don't want to fight until Loak rocks up with his outcast and a brutalized survivor from the outcast's pod. Seeing what the humans will do to the mothers and calves, the elders choose to fight for the first time ever, breaking ancient cultural practices and traditions. The battle itself felt very interchangeable with the Way of Water, although there were cool moments. I just felt like this ending sequence had too much human, not enough Ash people, and didn't deliver on Fire and Ash. It wasn't what I was expecting. It was still really well done, but I just don't think it hits the same as the first two finale battles for me, and once again at the end it feels like we're right back to where we were when the first film ended, and then the second film ended. A big win for the Na'vi at the cost of an important person's life, the humans slapped down, and Quaritch potentially dead but probably out there with the Ash people now. In the end, I think it's very clear that this is a Way of Water Part 2 rather than Avatar 3, and whilst it's a great movie, I think it could have been much better, and it all comes down to that second half. I know James Cameron's an ocean fanatic, but next time, I hope the setting shifts a bit more and we get some more fresh concepts, otherwise I don't see how two future films work in terms of my own personal enjoyment. With all that being said though, these have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of Fire and Ash? Did you like it? Hate it? Was it too samey for you, or did it strike the right balance of old and new? What did you think of the characters and their arcs? Were they well done? Would you have changed anything? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.